Hi everyone, this is Julianne Victoria of Through the Peacock's Eyes. Welcome to my channel. So this video is my depth year 2020 update. I kind of fell off keeping track of my depth year. I haven't fallen off my depth year at all, but with the whole, coronavirus shutdown stuff, I kind of stopped checking in to see where I was the last month and a half or so. So this is we're about a third of the way through the year, my first trimester check-in. So I have my list here that I made that I went through in my first depth year video for 2020. And my computer's doing that glitchy thing again, so hopefully it doesn't seem to show up in the recording, but if you notice anything, that's what's going on. And it's really hot, and the computer does that more when it's hot. So I went through my list, and we're going to go through it again and see where I am, how I've done. Something's great, something's not so great. But I also noticed in February, when I was still keeping track of my depth year, I made some notes here. And I wrote in February, getting to the deeper layers of my creativity. And I wrote notes about, how I've done so much root chakra work with family and ancestors. That also involves grounding in the present and where I am. A lot of healed and cleared blockages that I've done that has helped my creativity. And as I journaled on this a little more, I knew this, but the depth of it keeps sinking in more and more. I guess that's a way to put it. So it has to do with my sacral chakra being almost forced, or I guess torn open, by having my baby. And it was a very, I guess you could say, violent type of birth. So I do have a couple of videos on my pregnancy and my labor experience. I'll try to link one of those on screen here towards the end, or just go to my channel page through the vlogs and discussions if you want to check those out. And it reminded me of a dream I had, I think about 8, 9, 10 years ago. So the dream was, I gave birth to a fountain pen. And then somehow it was like triplets, 3 fountain pens, like it multiplied. And when I had that dream at the time, my initial impression, when I was writing out my dream in my dream journals, because I'm an avid dreamer and I really work the dream time and I keep journals on them, was that when I give birth, my creativity will flow. And I talked about this in my interview with Kasha at Tarot Map, in her Inspired Tarot Map series. That was the first time I've actually spoken about it, but I was like, when I was talking about it, I was like, yeah, that's something about my depth here I want to talk about. And it's creativity has really, not that I wasn't creative before, but it has really flowed since. And she's 2.5 years old now. And that flow of creativity is a big part of why I've chosen to kind of hop on the depth year bandwagons, is to direct that flow, to go deeper with that flow. And I have. It just goes deeper and deeper. And I'm someone who, I love to dive deep all the time. And it's bringing out all these weird and cool, but also funky, I say weird in a good way, creative projects. And that's something I've really looked into deeper within myself. It's also, I've realized I'm connecting deeper back, kind of with the root chakra work, to the creativity of my ancestors, my family, and how that also flows through me. But also the creative things I did. Creativity, I kind of mean any areas, but I'm kind of talking about artistic and writing and things like that. As a child, I used to draw quite a bit. I focused a lot on art in high school, and I'm working on getting comfortable again with my own drawings and paintings and artwork and things like that. So that's part of a big part of the diving deeper that this depth year of 2020 has been, is understanding my creative, computer hang up there. So I was saying my creative flow or blockages, and as well as things in everyday life that block or support that flow. Okay. So then also in February, or maybe a little bit later, because it's a different color pen. So I use different color pens to signify a change. Often a different time that I'm writing something down or a layer on top. I wrote down work harder or happier. And I can't remember where I heard that. I was watching some video, so this a while ago. And I just wrote, am I working harder? Am I working happier? And then I also wrote down Jessica Starr, the story witch. You know, she's a big part of the depth here thing. And I guess you could say she's one of the organizers. Well, she has a Facebook group for depth here that she's organizes. I don't know what you call it. She's in charge of. And she made a video talking about her maybe list. And I just love that. And I wrote that down under work harder or happier. So having a maybe list, and I'm not actually writing it down. It's more like when each week starts on a Monday. And then when each weekend starts, because weekends are especially now with no preschool, are my main client work time. A little bits during the week, but I'm with a 2-year-old all week, and I can't, do recordings like this or client recordings, and I can't have Skype sessions with her. So it's like a little bit in the evening. My husband's been trying to come home early 1 day a week, so I get a few extra hours there. But a lot of it is on the weekend. So I have my weeks are in 2 segments, the weekdays and the weekends. And again, I don't write out the maybe list, but every Monday I kind of pull the stuff out, put it on my desk, put it out on the counter, on the kitchen table. These are the things I would love to work on this week, whether it's a writing project, a deck project, or something else, personal project. Maybe we'll try to work in the garden project. I sort of prep things for the things I would like to get done, and that's my maybe list. And doing that, I feel like I'm actually accomplishing more. So it's not harder, it's happier, I guess, right? It's like, okay, maybe we'll get to that. And it's like, oh, I'm going to work on this. I'll work on my art. She'll work on her art. And I seem to accomplish more. And then the weekend, there's, scheduled clients recordings and Skype sessions and all that. Those aren't maybes. Those are scheduled things. But around that, the breaks in between, or okay, then we need to do this, we need to run these errands, and then I have more time, I fill that in with my maybe list, or the things I would like to get done and accomplish this week outside of the things that I have to do and that are scheduled. So I'm really loving that concept, even though I don't actually write out a list, but I prep the week. Okay. And then with the whole coronavirus and the shutdown, well, my husband's still working. I'm still working. So the major way that I'm affected is that mini me is not in preschool too, and we were actually going to start a 3rd morning a week. So I would have 3 mornings a week to focus on work, client readings, counseling sessions, and then creative things filled in when I'm not with clients. And at first it was just like, oh no, my work time is cut. I mean, that's 12 hours of work I could get in that time. Usually there's a couple hours in there, like I do set aside self-care time during that time too. So I was like, well, okay, how am I going to fit that in? I'll figure that out. But a lot of work time was lost. And especially since we're going to add a 3rd day, and all of a sudden I'm like, how am I going to get anything done? She's a 2-year-old. But it's put me in perspective. It's gotten me, instead of like, oh, I can't wait till preschool day and I'll get all these things done. It's like, especially with the maybe list thing and the whole concept of work. I'm going to phrase that right. Work harder or happier. Did I say work harder, not happier before? Work harder or happier. If I work happier instead of harder, I might have said that wrong. Work happy. How can I work happier and get things done with my child? And the stress that I thought would be there is not, because I've sort of surrendered to like, okay, we're gonna have to do things together. There's you probably know I get up in the between 4 and 5 a.m. and so I have that time for personal time. So I was like, I can take more advantage of that time or work that time better in a happier way, as well as trying to get up more towards 4 than 5 o'clock. So I have that personal time, that alone, quiet me time, and that's my favorite time of day is before sunrise. I can get a lot done, and I prep for the day, I prep for the week, including the maybes. A lot of it is maybes. But it got me to surrender if I just have a little more time and she's in preschool, I can get this and this done. And that surrendering of that has allowed me to integrate our needs, integrate our things we need to get done, our maybe things, our let's just have fun and play things. It's helped me to bring that all together, and I'm actually finding I'm maybe not way more productive, but I'm just as productive as I thought I would be and would normally be. Does that make sense? So, and my mood and my attitude about it is better. So somehow I'm like not having as much time for myself and for work has made it so that that's not necessary. It's hard to explain, but the depth of understanding myself and being able to manage and coordinate my needs, my work, and my 2-year-old's needs and her play and everything else. Like, I just didn't expect this. I didn't expect it to be so easy. And part of it was that surrendering the mind, thinking, I need this time, I need extra time, I need more time for this, and I need more time for that. It's like, no, okay, I didn't have that time, and it still all is working out great, and I feel like I'm more productive, I'm more relaxed. Not that I'm like super stressed before, but it's like I feel more relaxed. So I'm working happier and more productive, but I'm not working harder to make it happen. So that question, am I working harder or happier, has been significant. And then also the concept of a maybe list, like, or these are the things I would like to get done this week or this day. Usually it's a layer of those two, and I get them done because I've taken the pressure off. So I've learned a lot about myself, and I know I have high standards for myself, but it's made me realize I don't need, those standards can be there, but if I can surrender. I can surrender to what is, and I'll still probably meet all my goals, and probably even better, because when that stress is there, I get more tired, I get more frustrated. Yeah. Okay, so that was kind of a ramble. I don't know if that makes sense. So let's go through my list that I made in December for my diving deeper into 2020. So my 10 things here. My word of the year to review is focus, to focus better. Not harder, but happier, I'm realizing. And I wrote slowing down, less super multitasking, which I've done even before the whole coronavirus school shutdown thing. And I am less super multitasking. And I think that maybe list, or these are the things I would like to get done this week, has helped me to be like, okay, I don't need to try to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this to get all this done all at the same time. I can just say, okay, here's this project here. When there's time, I'll get it done. When the opportunity arises, here's this project here. Instead of like a little this in one room and then a little of that. Yeah, it's much better. I'm still, a mom of a 2-year-old. There's still some multitasking going on, but it's much less. It's not super multitasking. And then I had my mantra of the year. I made a video on that, and my mantra of the year is, how can I make this fun? And that was supported when I like reinforced by, again, I didn't write it down, whatever video I watched where it was like, are you working harder or happier? And just helped to remind me of my mantra of the year, how can I make this fun? And that also has helped with, not having that weekday work time, or during the weekdays work time, has really also helped. How can I make this fun? How can I have fun with the things I would like to get done with my 2-year-old? Not that I wasn't doing that before, but it's just knowing I don't have that time has somehow made it all so much easier. Okay, so number 1 on my list is tarot. And I wrote down less decks and clear a few more. I have cleared out a few more. There are a couple more I sold, I think, and then gave some away. So yes, less decks in that sense. But some decks have come in, like some decks that were sent to me or given to me. But I have bought a few decks. I'll talk about that. But I also wrote deeper study into decks, and that I have done too. So at the beginning of the year, I was diving into Kabbalah and Tarot of the Spirit, and I have this is the monster book. I've read most of this. I read all the main parts, and then there's the sections for all the cards, and I would read those sections as I pull the cards. So I didn't read it like front to back, but front to somewhere in here, and then as I pulled the cards. So I've read most of it. I don't think I've read all the cards, but I did work with that deck and this book quite a bit. January, it was a lot in January, and maybe into early February. Right now, my studies, I was going to say tarot studies, but it's actually rune studies. Since the beginning of the year, I've been working consistently with the runes. And if you don't know, like the first actual deck I bought myself, so I was gifted my first tarot deck. And the first deck I actually bought for myself was a rune deck. This was like late 90s. And I don't have that deck anymore. I think I got lost in a move along the way. But I have in this bag my little rune lapis lazuli runes that I'm using. And so every month and every season, or occasionally if I just have a question, or I should hold them up better for you as I drop them. They're tiny little lapis lazuli runes. So I'll pull 3 for a reading here and there, to restudy the runes, the meanings, to work with it as a spread. The junk journal I made, my little butterfly tabs, which you may have seen, I think I showed it in my lap book video, is my study journal. And so just to show you a few examples, this was my Imulk reading, and then I'll journal upon it. I'm also just writing in runes, so I have a background in languages and linguistics, so I'm just like writing things out. I wrote a poem to my baby in runes. I'm doing things like that to really study the runes. It's probably just once a week, just about once a week that I do something in this journal, my rune journal, my study journal right now. And I just do it when I have time. It's usually during nap time, once a week. Baby's nap time. Mini means nap time. I'm also been working through the book, The Power of Trees. So there's a tree for each month. The author, Sharon Hidalgo, she gives dates for each of the tree months, but she talks about in the introduction how the tree months were determined. The months began on the full moon. So I've altered the dates to the full moons, beginning with the first full moon after Samhain. And so I've altered the dates. So I'm going through this each month and reading each section for that and working with the tree energy there. She also references the runes and the Ogham in here. So that's interesting. And right now, just today, I got the Tabula Mundi Tarot, which is a Thoth tarot, and I've been wanting to. So the first actual tarot book I read for personal study many, many years ago was the book of Thoth, Thoth, however you want to say it. I had a Rider-Waite-Smith deck, and I read this book. I didn't know there were different systems. To me, it was like, oh, this is tarot, and this is just another part of it. So I actually read with a little mix of the two most of the time. Depends on the reading, and then of course the decks I use, and so many modern decks are very different. But I've been wanting to go back and reread this. So I have the Tabula Mundi Tarot, I have the Thoth Tarot, I have the Hermetic Tarot, and I have the Star Tarot, and the Sun and Moon Tarot. Those are my Thoth-ish based decks. Yeah, so that's next to add into my studies that I'm going to do. And then I'll just show this here because to me reading is studying. I rarely read things like fiction. To me it's like, well, I'll just watch a movie. I just like to learn, but you can learn a lot from fiction too. You may remember from last spring, this was one of the books I was reading. I read about, I'm probably close to 3/4 full, and then I stopped. And it's a 700-page book. It's super heavy. I want to finish that because I just completed another deck, which I'll get to. And an oracle deck I'm working on is very much based on Norse spirituality or Norse mythology, however you want to say that, or both. So that's my diving into studies for this depth here. And then my next, so studies was number 2. Number 3 was reading. That's what I'm reading, and I wrote time. Still, that's the most challenging, but that whole surrender to like, okay, I have less time to myself. Just figure out how it's going to work. You know, work happier, not harder. All that stuff, the maybe list, what would I like to get done, and somehow it's all getting done nicely. So even if the time is just, a little 20 minutes of reading every other day, I'm happy with that. Okay, as long as it's consistent. Number 4, books buying. I said no. I have plenty of books on the shelves behind me. I failed on that one. I have bought a couple of books. Well, actually 3, but one's kind of a journal. I bought this book, Spiritual Emergency, because I'm working on my book about schizophrenia. And it's interesting because I'm understanding things about myself and my journey through this. So I bought that. It has small sections, so I actually, I can read this while Mini-Me is playing. If she's busy playing with something and doesn't want my attention, she actually tells me to go off into another room now when she wants to do things. And then I also bought this journal, my book companion journal. And in this, it's a way to keep track of your writing process. I'm using it for my own book, the book about my journey. I guess it's a memoir, but that feels funny to say when you're not like 90 years old, right? But I bought this to keep track of the process, which I've decided, so I'm kind of jumping ahead to creative things, writing things, for that book, instead of just writing it on the computer, because that's a little harder to do when you got a little one running around. I'm writing it in this. This is a journal I've had for a long time. I think I actually bought it for my grandmother, and she used 2 pages, and I got it back when she passed away. So I'm using that. And then the other book I bought, even though I said no books, is Celtic Astrology. So I haven't started that. That's going to be on the shelf while I work through these other books. But I did buy that, so I had a buy fail when I said no books. I bought a few, but it's not bad. Okay. And they're definitely books I'm going to read. They're not going to sit on the shelf for years. Okay, number 5, buying decks. So I said one per quarter of the year. I think I might have said, one per month, but I'm going to try to go for one per quarter, which would be for a year. Failed on that too, but I haven't been buying as much as last year or the year before at all. I've been much better. So I've purchased this year. I've received some like Kickstarters from last year and things like that. I've purchased, I think, 5 decks this year. And I'm going to do a video on my new decks acquired in 2020 sometime soon. Purchased or acquired from like last year's Kickstarters. I'll do that sometime soon. But the decks I have purchased this year, paid for, one is the Hush Tarot, which I used in the shadow work spread video. I just did that last week, so you can check that out. I've backed 2 Kickstarters this year, so I don't have those decks, but I purchased them, so I broke my rule. That's 3. I also pre-ordered the Fantastical Menagerie Tarot by Baba Studios because I've wanted that deck for so long. It was out of print at a price like no way could buy or would buy it for, and it came back, and so I pre-ordered it because I've been wanting it for a long time. And then I got the Tabula Mundi Tarot today. That was sort of a I want to say a splurge, but it wasn't like super expensive, but an unnecessary purchase. But I was like, you know what, I need to have that deck. And then I also had bought the Plant Spirit Oracle, which is by the same creator as the Tarot of Trees, which is a deck I love, and that was off of Etsy, I believe. So yeah, I've failed in both buying books and buying decks category, but it's not that bad. So I'm not hung up about it. I'm not mad at myself about it. It's still way less books and decks than I bought the last couple of years. So I'm doing okay. So I'm going to give myself, since obviously I can't limit myself to 1 deck per quarter, I'm just going to say 1 a month. So I have to wait till the summer if I want to buy another deck, hopefully. Hopefully I'll do okay. Okay, number 6 was, health for the depth year. Obviously I'm pretty fine with all that. I eat pretty well. I walk the dogs every day. I also walk Mini-Me every day because she needs a walk. So I'm actually walking more. Not a whole lot more. She walks around the block. That's pretty good. And then chasing her around and playing all day. So like nutrition and exercise wise, I'm fine. But I wrote down stretch more and decrease coffee caffeine. I have been stretching more. So especially with the shutdown, lockdown, stay-at-home orders, Mini-Me and I have been playing on the patio, the back patio, for about 2 hours every morning, especially since the weather's been really nice lately. And I stretch then. I also, because also on my list next after health is regular yoga, pranayama, meditation practice. I do my yoga on the patio, which is what I used to do. I love doing yoga outside and getting a little sun, especially morning sun when I do that. There's also shade on the patio, so if it's too hot, I get in the shade. So I'm actually very consistently able to, 1, stretch after the walks and do my yoga pranayama practice. I don't sit there and meditate. I do that before going to bed, but that has become very consistent, and I'm really happy to be back to that, especially because just in the past week, like in the fall, 2 years after having Mini-Me, I was no longer in excruciating pain on a daily basis. There's a lot of healing going on. There was a lot of deep healing that triggered within me, physically, psychologically, spiritually, or you could say emotionally and spiritually. And that brought up a lot of physical pain because I'm a very physical empath and psychic. Like I feel things in my body. other people's things and my own, even if it's not an actual physical cause. But in the last couple of weeks, I've been like, this month of April, and part of it had to do with a decision about Mini Me's preschool. I'm actually completely pain free for the first time in over 3 years, because her pregnancy was very painful too. And that has allowed me to do yoga practice regularly. I had a pain in my neck and shoulder for so long that I couldn't lift my arm up. And you can't lift your arm up. That's really hard to do a lot of yoga poses. So that limited me quite a bit. And now I'm able to do all that. So I can dive deeper back into my yoga practice, which I'm so happy about. That used to be something that was just so consistent for many, many years. And it's been hit and miss for the past few years plus. Yeah. So very happy about that. The coffee and caffeine, I haven't cut down that a whole lot. I still, not that I'm drinking a ton, but I still have coffee or tea every day. It's not more, it's not less, something I can work on a little better. And the reason I want to cut back on that is because it can make me feel a little anxious and stressed, but I'm feeling more relaxed about everything else. That's not affecting me so much. So yeah, haven't worked on that really. So I'll get to that. Especially as it gets warmer, that actually gets easier. Yeah, okay. So then number 7 was regular yoga, pranayama, meditation. I also wrote here hiking and gardening more. So I garden when I need to. Hiking, obviously with the shutdown, springtime here, we haven't gone out for hikes. But I just looked it up this week, and some of the trails, like the more, not way up in the mountains, but the more like local on the bluff trails and the beaches, are actually open. So we might try to make some trips out there. It's not that far. Number 8 on my list for depth here was creating. And in December, as the depth year began, or maybe I made the video in January, but I wrote down, Ethany talks about more creating than consuming. She talked about that in her New Beginnings 2020 video, and I was part of that whole 24-hour thing. And that really stuck with me. I was like, yes, more creating than consuming. Not that consuming was much more than creating before, but I wanted creating to be much more than consuming. So I have cut down on how many videos I watch. That has also opened up time and space for self-care, for somehow magically managing everything and getting pretty much everything done on my maybe list done, and sometimes then some. So I talked about the writing. I'm working on the book on schizophrenia still. With that one, I have to just go when it flows. I can't just sit down and make myself write it, because it's a lot of exploring because my sister's the subject in it, exploring her psyche, but also our relationship and how there are similarities. It's very complicated. So that I work on when there's flow and that it goes up and down, but it's not like it hasn't stopped. So that's good. And it's really deep and intense at times. So sometimes I just need a break from it. And then, I mentioned my book, my story, that I'm keeping track of in the book companion journal. And then reading this book is giving me some insights, or like, oh yeah, that's affirmations, right? And writing in here. But also, yeah, writing the book out with a pen. That was a good decision, because I can walk around with that and write while Mini Me's playing with stuff and talk to her and things like that. But if I'm typing, it's like I don't want that distraction. It's a totally different thing, totally different like process of writing, whether I'm writing with a pen or I'm typing it. So that was a revelation, actually. And then decks, I just finished the deck. Then my next tarot deck, I'm waiting on the proofs. And what I'm really excited about it is that I used some of my grandmother's watercolor paintings from the 1970s. Like the decision, the realization, like, oh, I'm going to use some of those images actually for all the minors. um, it brought I got this feeling of like happiness and pride from her. Like, I work deeply with my ancestors, but she's like my muse. She's, even when she was alive, like a guardian angel. She was very psychic. And it just, not that we needed healing with our relationship, but it brought us closer together. She's in spirit now. She's been gone for 18 years or so. Um, yeah, it's like it was meant to be. And I've had her paintings for so long, and I always thought, oh, maybe I'll do something with them, like to honor her. And all of a sudden, it was like it wasn't my plan at all. I was doing something completely different with the deck, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to use those paintings. So I'm very excited about that. So the creativity is flowing, right? Those fountain pens from the dream are multiplying. And then, of course, I have the Oracle deck I've been working on. Um, that will be the next focus of it as a deck creation. I have other ideas, but I realized, I need to just jot the ideas down and complete one project and not try to work on not so super multitask creating decks. I also wrote down with creating is regular blogging monthly. I think I have posted on my blog once a month, but it hasn't necessarily been like writing. It's been like, hey, I created my Vedic astrology cards. So I still need to get a little better on that, but I have been posting monthly, I think. And also with creating, oh, so in January, I don't know if you saw the video, I created a monstrous, I meant to bring it in, but it's in the other room, lapbook travel desk with a whole bunch of pockets to stick decks in, different sizes. I can fit my iPad in there. I can slide books in there. I can tie books in. It's got these papers that were paintings my aunt had made and things from my grandmother. I'm like, so, like, it's just this beautiful little creation I made, just spur of the moment. I wanted something besides decks and writing to create, and I just had this idea, and it was like within 2 weeks I had created it. It's all got cloth on the outside. It's 100% recycled materials, things I already had. The only thing I bought was a hole puncher to punch through the cardboard. I'm just like, that was just like this extra needed opening of a flow of creativity. So if you haven't checked that video out, check it out. Maybe I'll try to link that one on screen. Or if you go to my channel page, you can scroll down and find all the playlists and categories there, or just click on playlists, or do this little search thing, lapbook travel desk. You'll see it, you'll find it. And then I've been making, so far I've made a few of my handmade medieval sigils tarot, the Sigilla Medievalia. I have my print version that's came out last September. I've been making handmade ones. It takes some time, little bits here and there. So another like creative project where I'm using my hands. I did make a video on this too. I'm tracing out the cards. I'm cutting them by hand. I'm staining them with coffee. And then I have to press them for a while because when it dries, it does start to warp. And then I hand paint all the sigils. So there's like 78 pieces, actually 79, because you get a personal sigil with it, of handmade pieces of art. I have the leather pouches. I've ordered a whole bunch of handmade leather pouches to put them in. So it's like the idea is to replicate approximately what someone in medieval times would have. So a leather pouch and cards that look like they would have been on parchment or something used in medieval times. So that has been fun to create. So I'm loving having a creative thing again that's not designing decks on the computer or writing a book. And that has helped actually bring in some balance. And even though it's more, it somehow has made it all easier. So I know it's weird. Okay. And then the last two things on my depth here list, number 9, declutter the garage. Hasn't happened. That depends on my husband getting projects done too. We keep trying, so still working on it. And number 10, I wrote down, thanatology studies, a certification there. I did look more into it. Probably not something I'll do this year. You never know. But I will have to, there's a whole bunch of books I'll have to buy for that, and time for study. So that I'll probably wait till Mini-Me actually is back in preschool or in school full time, something like that. So that is on hold. That wasn't on my list to do this year, but to look further into, and I did look further into it. So that is how my depth year is going. A little failure on the buying, no buy, and exceeded my quota for decks, but I'm gonna try to keep it as like one per month, so 12 decks the entire year or less if I can do that. But really, the like surrendering the pressure I put on myself to get things done. That maybe list idea was so key to that. And my mantra of the year: how can I make this fun? Then affirmed and reinforced by: am I working harder or happier? That has all helped my word of the year, which is focus. And yeah, to not put pressure on what I'm focusing on and just focus on what I'm focusing on in the moment. I guess that's really it. Okay, so this is a super long video. It feels very, very rambly. Hoping some of it all makes sense. But it was about time to do a depth year update. I haven't seen a whole lot of these, although of course I'm not watching as much because I'm creating more than I'm consuming. But maybe a lot of people with all that's going on have sort of like dropped focusing on that. But yeah, so I hope you found this interesting, maybe inspirational in some way. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for liking. Oh, and I got to remember, thank you those who are clicking that applaud button. I really appreciate the support for the channel. It's the videos may seem short, but it's a lot of time put into it, so I really, really appreciate that. Yeah, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff, and I'll see you back here soon.